Yeah. So maybe I'll start and then Otto, you continue. I think this is the moment where we realize that the potential of the future can only be realized through humans and human creativity. So anything that's new and that's intentionally created needs human beings. I work a lot with banks and financial institutions that use finance as a tool for social change. And their innovation happens when they ask the question, what do our communities need? And how can I develop a financial solution for that? For example, I just spoke to the CEO of a bank in Bangladesh, and they have created a system using AI to provide loans to small entrepreneurs who cannot read or write and have never had an account. To do this requires intention and creativity. So this is creating something that people usually in banks don't think about. So you need to step out of the existing framework and with your compassion for these entrepreneurs and your knowledge how important they are for fighting poverty, you begin to think in new ways. And that's a deeply human ability that combines empathy, the vision of the future with your skill set. And that requires humans. But for doing this, we as humans need to trust ourselves. We need to, as Otto said, protect our attention. What do we pay attention to? And find others who collaborate. And so the new solutions we need require this deeply human capacity. Otto, maybe over to you.
I don't know, perhaps you have seen, I think a few weeks ago, 3 weeks ago or so, we had a study that, or a pre-study that came out at MIT, the MIT Media Lab. And they did, I think for the first time ever, do impact research of the use of AI on the human brain and cognitive capacities. They found they had 58 participants in that study. They grouped them into 3 groups. So they got creative writing tasks. So they needed to write stuff. And the first group was able to use AI. The second group was able to use Google as a helpful tool. And the third group was not allowed to have any of these tools. The result, and then they did 5 rounds, and then in the 6th round, they switched. So the AI group was not allowed to use any tools, and vice versa. Kind of the group without tools now could use AI and the other tool. The result was pretty stunning to the researcher and to everyone else, which is that the group without AI use and without also, the Google was in the middle. So the group without AI use was performing just fine, right? Kind of also when they switched, when they allowed for the use of AI. While the group that used AI, they found 3 things. So the brain activity went down. So that was perhaps the most, so they did MRIs, right? And so as you know, kind of in brain research, cognition research, they neurons that fire together, wire together. So it's like the firing of the neurons in the more creative areas of the brain went significantly down. So they were quite shocked to see that. And it did not change in the last round when they were taking away the tools. Number two, the memory went down. So people could not remember kind of what was in that. So that went constantly down. And number three, the quality of the output was just, there were a lot of footnotes and so on, but it was pretty mediocre, right? And it was not really quality. While the people without tools had a much different perspectives, and on average, a much higher quality. So that's the data there. And it's kind of the first time we have a study like that. And it basically says in the moment that AI will be used more and more, right? If we use it in schools, that's just kind of, it has very adverse impact on deep creativity, which is exactly the one thing in the face of the AI moment we all live in, we need to strengthen. So it reminds me of, Silicon Valley, right? Kind of a lot of the tech CEOs sending their own kids to Waldorf schools and stuff, kind of where you have kind of very little access to these types of technologies, while the same companies flood the public schools with devices. So kind of you see an interesting bifurcation there. So I would say all of that is the backdrop of what we just did with the OECD. So I was part of a policy-making group there. And the OECD with 80 countries, the PISA group, kind of it's the board of the PISA group, just adopted a framework that was that's basically suggesting a version of what Katrin articulated before, so that you not only in the face, so the suggestion is that we need to reimagine education to education for human flourishing in the face of AI. That is, yes, not only focusing on mental and cognitive capacities, but also on aesthetic, artistic, and ethical capacities, which is kind of the empathy kind of that Katrin was referring to. And in my experience as an educator, I would say the best way of teaching that in the classroom, and I'm doing that, for example, with mid-career executives and with MBAs in higher ed, in my classroom at MIT, the best way of doing that is through embodied forms of learning, kind of through using social arts, several of which have been pioneered through the Pressing Institute and their art community, which really create a rich reservoir of practices that allow students to create literacy for activating the intelligence that is beneath the neck, right? Because if we are stuck with education only in this area, the intelligence above the neck, that is no longer good enough, and that is a dead end in the age of AI. In the age of AI, what is unique about human beings is really kind of all these capacities of relating and of creating, and social art practices are one of the most important tools for the new learning environment that we need to create in order to deliver on what I believe is a very significant shift in the direction of education that we just, adopted with the OECD, kind of the high-performing countries in the OECD, which is education for human and for planetary flourishing.